Towson, Baltimore, and take a little bit of time to reach out to some old pals here and talk some old school slobber knocker football with a guy who at one point in his career was here in Baltimore. He spent many years out in San Diego covering the San Diego Chargers, now lives in and around the New York area and is the host as well as out there writing for all things talkoffamenetwork.com. We host their program here on Sundays at WNST. He is our friend and longtime NFL insider Clark Judge. You can follow him at Clark Judge TOF out on Twitter. Clark, first things first, the Ravens are certainly trending in the right direction, as are your former team, the Chargers, that you covered for many years, trending in the right direction right now.
Yeah, they are. I mean, what we saw from Baltimore this past weekend I thought was really interesting because for the first time, Joe Flacco looked like Joe Flacco. He got the ball downfield, was accurate. They put points on the board. They ran the ball effectively. I thought they were dominating defensively for most of the game. But it was nice to see the Ravens back to where they should be at this time of year. And now it makes this Pittsburgh game look that much bigger because you look at that game and see, could Baltimore win it? Yeah, they could. I mean, honestly, if Baltimore were to get in the playoffs, they're going to be dangerous for teams because they can play defense. Any team that can play defense and come up with the kind of takeaways they can is dangerous. The same thing with, I started to say San Diego, but the Los Angeles Chargers. They play very good defense, and that's not like them in recent years. They've always had Phillip Rivers, who's the best quarterback in that division, but they've missed some elements defensively. Now they get after the quarterback, and they're very effective defensively. Rivers isn't turning the ball over. They also run pretty well. I think they're going to win that division. That's not exactly novel thought. I'm not going out on a limb here, Nestor, by saying that. Kansas City's falling apart. Oakland's got a difficult road ahead of it. It looks like the Chargers for the first time in a long time. And for Phillip Rivers' sake, I think that's great.
Well, in the case of the Ravens, the thing that has stuck out for me the last couple weeks that I wanted to talk to you about, and I had John McClain in here last week, at the Texans game where Suggs is running around. He's running around, sagging the quarterback again on Sunday. Clark, I'm one of those guys that's sort of on the inside-outside track to be in that room and voting on who's in and who's not in. No one has seen more Ravens football than I, who's not on the committee. And, I don't know that I would have been a Suggs guy 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even after the first injury. I think there have been times in his career where he's been sort of overweight and disinterested to some degree, and sort of surrounded by all this other greatness and leadership that is coming on. And he was a bit of a clown for a long period of time, and not to mention the bleach incident, which, I think in the modern era of harassment and all the nonsense that's going on, that will be brought up and should be brought up for the Hall of Fame. But I can't tell you what, I've never seen anything like this at this point, and I never would have predicted this sort of afterglow in the September of his years.
Yeah, I'm not that close to it. I certainly followed him over the years. I've been down there many times. I've talked to him many times. But you're right. He was always another player on a very good defense. It was Ray Lewis or Ed Reed you were talking about. Maybe it was Bulware. Maybe it was Syracuse. Just going way, way, way back. But he wasn't there, obviously, when Tony was. But when you've got some of those other guys, you always look at Baltimore and say, boy, defensively, they've got so many good players. Terrell Suggs is one of them. And now, Reed's gone. Lewis is gone. They'll both end up in Canton. And you look at Suggs and say, well, it's kind of the last man standing from some of those great defenses. And he's good. And he's sticking around and playing very well. And I think longevity does count in the minds of a lot of people on that board. And I know what we've seen in the past year because Terrell Davis got in and he had basically 3.5 great seasons, and people said, geez, this is going to set a precedent. It's going to be dangerous. And I think that's true. Listen, he had a great career and he had a great playoff, but 3.5 great seasons, that's kind of tough, but it got him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Tony Baselli is another guy with a short career. He's on the short ballot right now. He was a top 10 choice last year, and he might make it this year. Same thing goes with Kenny Easley, short career. But then you look at a guy like Suggs who's been around forever and productive for a long time, and it reminds me somewhat of Kevin Green. Kevin Green hung around a long time and was effective, and yet people would say when he was playing, well, it was Joey Porter that you had to look out for, or somebody else, Sam Mills at some point. And you look at Kevin Green and went, wait a second, let's just look at, over the years, he had 12, 15, 13, 11 of these sacks, and sacks count a lot with that group. Maybe unfairly so. Tackles for losses and sacks count a lot, and we love pass rushers, and Suggs is one of the best. and we love them because we put nine of the past 10 seasons, we've had at least one edge pass rusher. It's gone to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, including this year when Jason Taylor went on his first try. So we love pass rushers. Yeah, I think he's a worthy candidate, and the fact that he's hanging around now, and not just hanging around to pick up a paycheck, he's a great player. He's getting sacks. He's getting to the quarterback, and I think he's a leader, and that counts for something as well. So he checks all the boxes. He's also a Super Bowl champion. He checks all the boxes. I think he's got a pretty good shot of getting into Canton.
Well, we're about to go through a little run here with Ray Lewis in a few weeks. You guys will be voting on that. Then Ed Reed's going to come down the line after that. So we're going to have a few trips over the mountains out to Canton, Ohio here in the next couple of years. I mean, there's no question on Ray Lewis, right? I mean, there won't even need to be a presentation, right?
No, I look at that group, and someone said, who's the most electable person in that group? And it's Ray Lewis to me. I look at it and say, of these guys, the one sort of can't-miss candidate of the 27 semifinalists is Ray Lewis. And I saw someone put out a list, and they didn't even have him among the top 5. I mean, I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Ray Lewis is getting in first ballot. I mean, there's no question. And then you start thinking about everyone else. The same thing, honestly, when Ed Reed's name comes up. He's going to be, in my estimation, I'm speaking only for myself, one of 48 guys. Ed Reed will make it, too. I mean, Ed Reed will make it as a first-ballot guy, and he should. Now, we're a group that typically doesn't like safeties. Safeties and guards, for whatever reason, we haven't put them in ready numbers. We're reluctant. Alan Faneca is one of the most electable guys in this group, and yet he's waited, I think, 2 or 3 years, and he doesn't make the top 10. I go, why not? Because he plays guard, that's why, and that's a bad reason. But it's not a sexy position. He'll get in, and I hope he gets in soon, but he's eminently qualified. He should be in sooner than later. The same thing here is with Ed Reed. When he comes up, you go safety. Well, we let Kenny Easley in this year, not let him in. We put him in for the right reasons. He belongs. Ed Reed will get in. And then you look at Polamalu, and you look at John Lynch, and you start going down the list. I think Brian Dawkins, honestly, probably will join Ray Lewis this year as a guy who gets in. We're more flexible, and we should be on that position. But Ray Lewis is one of the most dominant middle linebackers of all time. Is the best I've ever seen? No, he's not. I've seen some others, but not many. I mean, he was the best of his era, and he comes up with Brian Urlacher, and you want Ray Lewis or Brian Urlacher? Brian Urlacher was a great player. I'm taking Ray Lewis, and that's why, to me, you start with Ray Lewis and you work your way down the board.
Clark Judge joining us here. He is Clark Judge, TOF, and that's for Talk of Fame. You can hear their work here on Sunday, late mornings on WNST.net and AM 1570, and you can follow all of their work at Talk of Fame Network, and, of course, Clark's always tweeting as well from Clark Judge, TOF. Clark, for the rest of this league right now, I mean, Philadelphia taking a little gut punch into the middle of the night on Sunday out in Seattle. That shouldn't come as a shocker to anyone. It is shaping up to be an interesting race here, as the quarter pole turns here and down the stretch they come. Not just for the Ravens, who can win and get through this thing, and the Chargers, who had a dismal start to the season, but you also see what's happened to the Chiefs and what's happened to the Broncos, and where the Bears are, and the Giants firing a coach. There are going to be a lot of job openings here at the end of this year, and that may include Dallas or Washington or Marvin and Cincinnati. I mean, there are just a lot of places where it feels like there's going to be some turnover.
Yeah, there is typically. Yes, so there are 7 to 8 openings, and I think that's what it's going to be this year. And people go, "Whoa!" I mean, it's a lot. No,
it's quarter of the league, right? Literally, right?
Yeah, yeah. And we mentioned Marvin. I don't think Marvin is coming back in Cincinnati. It's in the last year of his contract. I think it's time for him to move on, and not because I don't think Marvin's worthy. I think he's done what he can do in Cincinnati, and he needs a change. I think they both need a change. What about Hugh Jackson in Cleveland? He's won one game in 2 years. I mean, listen. I don't fault him as much as I do like a Ben McAdoo, for instance, and the Giants with the way that thing has been handled, the way things have gone there. But he's had the same problem that New York has for a few years, which is the lack of leadership from up top. I mean, in Cleveland, they pass on Carson Wentz. They pass on Jared Goff. They pass on Deshaun Watson. And now you've got a quarterback who may or may not be good, but I know those 3 others can play, and you passed on him for a team that's won one game in 2 years. I don't come down as hard on Hugh as maybe some others do, but at some point, you got to get this thing straightened out. I expect they'll probably blow up the front office again and probably go for another head coach.
I don't know how you can't when you're 0-16, right?
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either. And, at some point you go, we need to tell the fans we can't take this. We just can't take it. They can't take it. We can't either. We've got to make a change. But they make a change every 2 or 3 years, and that's why they're not successful. I mean, sooner or later, they've got to get something right. You would think they've got to get something right. But you're right. I mean, there's always, to me, one team, one franchise that's going to surprise you. Every year there's one where you go, whoa, I didn't see that coming. Remember when it was Mike Shanahan one year? Whoa, I didn't see Mike Shanahan going. And there's always a surprise. John Fox one year in Denver. Whoa, didn't see that coming. So there'll be one of those this year. But yeah, I'd say 7 to 8, and I'm more interested to see who the guys are going to be that are going to fill those jobs, because we used to get the retreads and then get these guys and pass them around. There's some good young dynamic assistant coaches, either at the pro level or sometimes some good young dynamic coaches at the college level that get a chance, and that'll be interesting. But within that division that Baltimore's in, there's so much stability, with the exception of Cleveland. Because you look at Pittsburgh, you look at Cincinnati, you look at the Ravens. There's tremendous stability, and that's why it's one of the best, if not the best divisions around.
Well, we could sit here and talk about the Ravens' offensive ineptitude early in the year, talk about the injuries, you can talk about Yonda being out, you can talk about Flacco not being very good in the running game, but right now the story is they've won 3 in a row. They dispatched the Detroit Lions, which may have been the toughest home game left on the schedule. They're going to see Deshaun Kaiser and Jacoby Brissett and the Cincinnati Bengals at the end. But then there's this Pittsburgh hurdle this week. And they're just going to be a 5 or 6 seed based on whatever it's going to be based on here, winning or losing the next couple of weeks. They need to win. You better hope that Jacoby Brissett is not the reason you're not playing in January, right?
Yeah, right.
And losing a home game on December 23rd. But, that is to be played out. But this Pittsburgh game, I don't know that it's going to affect much other than the psychology of the Ravens potentially beating Nashville or Jacksonville in the first week and having to go play in Pittsburgh or having to go play up in New England and saying, this is the final test before the big test, because you're expected to beat Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati on the way to the playoffs. The question is, how are you going to handle good teams? This is a good team with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, no question, Esther. I mean, that to me is what this game's all about. You've got a chance, and I know we say this all the time, but you've got a chance to make a statement here. People don't want to play the Baltimore Ravens if and when they get in the playoffs for a couple reasons. As I said, one is defense. The second is, like or not, you've got a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You've got a guy who's been there before and run the table, so he knows what it's like. He can win big games. We know that. He's done it year in and year out. I don't care what your opinion of Joe Flacco is. When they get in the playoffs, he knows how to win games. So you look at Baltimore and say, well, if they got in, could they beat a Jacksonville? Sure. Could they beat a Tennessee? Yeah, they could. Absolutely. Could they beat a Pittsburgh? I don't know that. I'm of the belief that right now, as we're looking at it, it's a 2-team race in the AFC, and that's, again, not exactly a novel thought, but you play the conference championship game tomorrow, and it's going to be Pittsburgh and New England. New England's the team to beat, as they are every year. But Baltimore's got a chance in the last month to make something happen. We've seen it before. I mean, you saw what happened in 2012, and I remember thinking at the end of the year, this team, it's not going to happen with these guys. Then they had that huge win, I think it was against the Giants down there in Baltimore. Whoa, they're going to do something here. They're going to get in, and suddenly they got some momentum. I saw it with Green Bay, 2010. They got in and they got some momentum. They had the quarterback to carry them to the top, and they did that. Baltimore's got some of those elements. Yeah, there's shortcomings. Everyone's got a hole. Every team's got a hole. There's not a great team out there. There are great quarterbacks out there. It's not really a great team. Everyone's got something that's missing. But Baltimore gets in, gets something going. We've seen it happen before. Do I expect it? No, I don't. But they've got a chance, as you said, this Pittsburgh game, to kind of make you think, you know what? We better remember these guys because they've done it before. This head coach has done it before. And this quarterback's done it before.
He is Clark Judge. You can find him at Clark Judge, TOF, out on Twitter. Longtime NFL writer and Hall of Fame voter. Talk of Fame Network is also out there for you. And the Talk of Fame radio programming heard each and every Sunday here at WNST.net. This portion of our WNST programming brought to you by Lee Tessier and his team at Keller Williams American Premier Realty. List your house with Lee and risk nothing. His team will get your house sold. You can find him at LeeTessier.com. Also, Costas Inn, good enough for the Today Show and my mom. The Fat Crabs, the cold beer, the legend continues. CostasInn.com, and they do ship those out for the holidays for you as well. Clark's had a crab cake or two down here covering the Baltimore Colts back in the day. On the NFC side, where the Eagles lose the other night and the Vikings now move into this catbirds position at 10-2, hosting games and playing the Super Bowl at home, I would still be, and you talk about a team that's a shock, the Drew Brees thing going on in New Orleans. I beware of Drew Brees in that offense, especially if weather conditions are good in a place like Minnesota. Maybe not in Philadelphia on a 15-degree day, but you talk about great quarterbacks. There's a great quarterback who's going to be playing football in January, and I don't think anybody would have bet on that in August.
No, I wouldn't have. In fact, when they lost the first two games, well, here we go again, another 7-9 season, 8-8, whatever. They're going to play out the string, and at some point, they've got to move on. And look at what's going on there. Their defense has come together. It's not a great defense, but they play well enough. One of the reasons is because they run the ball. It's not a Drew Brees' shoulders anymore. He's not carrying that team, and that's good for them. I mean, he's done that in the past, and it worked 1 year. He's not carrying that team, and so you've got extended drives. With extended drives, your defense isn't on the field as often. They're rested. They're better. They're playing better. The fact that they've got these two backs who are so good, Ingram and Kamara, they are playing so well, it takes a ton of pressure off his shoulders. And, Nestor, I saw it, and we all saw it a couple years ago with the Dallas Cowboys. When they had, it wasn't just last year with Ezekiel, it was actually 3 years ago.
Murray.
DeMarco Murray had that great year with them, had a great year, led the league in rushing by about 500 yards. He took all the pressure off of Tony Romo. They were the best team in the NFC, except until they got to the playoffs, they weren't. But it took a ton of pressure off of Romo, and he played so well, people were pushing him for MVP. And you go, whoa. I mean, this is what happens when you block and when you run the ball and when he doesn't have to carry the team. And, again, you saw it last year when Zeke Elliott was there and what Dak Freeman as a rookie did, which was pretty nice and pretty remarkable. But still, when you get that taken off of quarterback shoulders, it's so much easier for them. It is for Drew Brees. He's carried teams before. Doesn't have to do it now, and especially at the age of whatever it is, 38. I think that's great for him. And you see the results. Now, for me, both they and the Vikings have to host the NFC Championship game if they're going to go to the Super Bowl. They have to. They go in anywhere. They go outside to Philadelphia. If they go outside anywhere, they're done. And you look at the record. I was looking at it last night. Dome teams, indoor teams, whenever they go outside to play a conference championship game, they're 0-12. When they're inside to play an outdoor team, they're 5-1, including Atlanta last year beating Green Bay. So to me, it's critical for both those teams to get the home game. And if they don't, I think that's probably where it ends. And the thing you like about New Orleans, again, Drew Brees, Super Bowl tested quarterback, 1-1. What you don't like about Minnesota is Case Keenum. You go, I don't know what we're going to get in the playoffs. But I'll tell you what, so far, God, guy's been tremendous. And I'm sort of tired of people talking about, Teddy Bridgewater. Geez, Case Keenum is the guy there. Let's let him go. I mean, you're not old enough to remember, but I certainly am, when Earl Morrall had such a great run with the Miami Dolphins, in place of Bob Greasy. That was terrific. And he was a backup. He did a terrific job. And he did the same thing with the Colts.
There's a stigma on backups, aren't there? I mean, when you're a backup, when you're Case Keenum, and I thought about this through the history of the league. How many guys have ever been really good when they were? Kurt Warner, obviously, we'll put him at the top of the list. I think that's a special thing. Tom Brady would be another guy, certainly in that category. But I'm talking about guys that rode the pine for 3 years as a backup, or 4 years. I think of Chris Chandler. He sort of began as a apprentice or whatever. But there's not a whole lot of apprentice quarterbacking going on where you win championships. Maybe you go back to Johnson, Brad Johnson, for a period of time as well. But that wasn't sustainable. I'm wondering whether Case Keenum, who came out of a tree as a third-string quarterback and was on and off the edge of every roster for a number of years, that he's going to go and win double digits in this league a couple of years in a row. I find that hard to believe because I've never seen it done before. Yeah, no, that's right. But you know what? Right now, he's got the hot hand. They're playing well with him. It works. It works nicely. I'd say let him go. Just let him go. Let's see what happens, because stranger things have happened. Let's see him play this thing out, because they've got something very special going on in Minnesota. He doesn't have to carry that team. Again, it's the defense. He's not making plays to hurt them. And you saw it
in 2000 with the Ravens. And I mean, this isn't the Ravens defense from 2000, but it's a good defense. And he's making plays, much like Trent Dilfer did then, when he has to. But he doesn't have to be Tom Brady. He doesn't have to be Carson Wentz. He just makes plays that are productive and that are reasonably safe, and he doesn't lose games. He's more than a manager, though, because as you saw, that was a tough game against Atlanta last weekend. But he made the plays when he had to. He can do that. He just can't make the mistakes, and he hasn't done that.
Clark, the war going on between Goodell and Jerry Jones. I have not talked to you since this period of time. It seems like a strange topic. I've known you a long time. I didn't think we'd be talking about this sort of a power struggle and Jerry making demands and suing the league. Boy, that thing got messy 2 weeks ago, and it's tamped down. It's been a little more quiet. But I would think behind the scenes, that fire's still burning, even if Don Van Note is not writing about it this week, right?
Yeah, I would think it probably is, but it's sort of settled down. I mean, let's face it, Nestor. I mean, this isn't about Roger Goodell's tenure as a commissioner. This isn't about the compensation or what he's asking. Some of what he's asked for, yeah, it's excessive. I mean, it seems ridiculous. But this is about Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, he felt betrayed. Jerry Jones felt betrayed, so he lashed out. Not having Ezekiel Elliott in his mind cost him a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And he felt as if he was betrayed by a commissioner who led him to believe that he wasn't going to be suspended. So he threw a tantrum and said, here's what I want to do. And the other owners kind of looked at him and went, well, I don't know. I mean, has Roger Goodell been a great commissioner? And the answer is no. I mean, and all sorts of missteps have been taking place. However, this is a guy who was in his corner a year ago, and this past summer in Canton, I saw him there when he was inducted, and he was in Roger's corner then because he thought Ezekiel Elliott was not going to be suspended, and it turns out he was. So, we saw that happen with Robert Kraft, and what's happened. Robert Kraft seems to have gotten over the Tom Brady Deflategate thing because, well, they won a Super Bowl. That's why, and so he's let it go. But with Jerry Jones, not quite the same. He doesn't have the votes to get done what he wanted. However, he is the most influential owner in the game, and when he throws a tantrum, other guys sit back and listen. But when you saw Robert Kraft and what he said last week, it showed me that, you know what? And this time it's a voice crying in the darkness because he's a lone wolf right now, and there are a lot of people saying in that room, Jerry, I'm not so sure. Yeah, some of the things you bring up in terms of the compensation things he's done, yeah, they're valid. However, let's get down to it. We're making money, and we're making a lot of money, and that's good for us. And so we're not eager to make that change. You want to make a change, or you want to make this difficult for him because you're not going to the Super Bowl. We understand that, but we're not with you.
Clark, we got a lot of empty seats here. We got a mess going on in Baltimore. We're going to be cleaning that thing up here in the offseason. It's unlike anything I've seen. There's no more home field advantage here. It's gone from the toughest place in the league to play to a place you come in and there's 15, 20, 25,000 empty seats. The knee has had incredible impact here.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nestor. That's not the only place that's going on. Look around the league. I mean, there were some games last weekend. I looked at the stands and went, I've never seen so many empty seats. Now, you look at in MetLife Stadium last weekend when the Jets were playing, I mean, it looked like a preseason game. It looked like it was half full. Any game that's played out in Santa Clara, because I used to cover the 49ers, I look at those games. Those games are ridiculously low crowds. And so it's going on across the league. And, yeah, I mean, it's had an impact. Not... And I would say not in necessarily a positive way that way. I mean, it's positive in that we've got a dialogue going, and I think that's positive, and I think people should be listening to what's going on. However, for the league to say, or anyone to say, no, it doesn't make a difference, get their head buried in the sand. Look in the stands. If people aren't going to games as they used to, I mean, tickets are easy to get. Even in Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay, now, when I've seen games in Green Bay, by and large, they look like the stands are full, but you can get tickets now where you couldn't before.
They were $50 a couple weeks ago. We played out there on a chilly day, but it was full. I mean, it's the only time I've been in a full stadium since the knee. Wembley was pretty full, actually, as I remember it that day. Clark, we're going to stay in touch, man, and keep running the Talk of Fame Network. You guys keep doing the good work. I know you always have something Ravens-centric going on at some point, or Ravens-related, and I know as we get closer to the Ray Lewis vote, there'll be more of that happening. Appreciate you, man. We'll send everybody out to Twitter to find you at Clark Judge, TOF. Always a great visit, man.
You got it, Nestor. Thank you.
You got it. Clark Judge, one of our favorites at Talk of Fame Network, and Clark Judge, TOF. He is on the Hall of Fame committee and making sure the right people get into Canton, Ohio. And much like all the other voters I've talked to in recent weeks, they believe Ray Lewis is going to get in, as well as Ed Reed. Nobody's voted against that. And we've been talking a lot about Terrell Suggs. It is Pittsburgh week here this week. Luke is on the backfields at Owings Mills. We will be together at Heinz Field on Sunday night. It's a big game. We're 7-5. They're pretty good, too. Probably going to have to see him again. Almost certainly going to have to see him again if you're going to get to the Super Bowl this year. And I'm starting to clear the deck for the first weekend of January for some playoff football. You can find anything you missed this week in the buyatoyota.com audio vault. It is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Text Service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home, but it's the SSV on WNST, now heard on Thursdays from 3 until 5. I am Nestor. I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.